Thank goodness you're back. We are here with part 2 of the movie Closer. Like I said in the ending of the last video, I had no idea that this movie was going to be so intricate. I mean, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it, but I had no idea. So the review took way longer than I anticipated, so I gave you guys a part 2. Welcome back to my channel. My name is LorenEleece, and you are watching the second part of Closer. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, okay? Alright, let's continue on now. Here are the symbolisms. This movie was great. This movie was great because, for one, you never hear a movie that speaks so vulgar that it's almost like it's forbidden. But it was so, like, this is the way, I mean, not maybe as raunchy as this movie, but this is the way when we are with our friends, when we are out and about, how people actually talk. But you don't see that in movies, and this was just like about as real, cutthroat, blunt, straightforward as it could possibly get. Alright, so let's start from the beginning, right? Starting with the name of the movie, I have no idea why they call this movie Closer. I have been trying to figure it out. They really should call this movie Stranger, because throughout this entire movie it foreshadowed about strangers, because Anna liked to take pictures of strangers. Dan was stealing Alice's identity to write a book, and his exhibit was named Strangers. Alice says to Dan, "Hello, stranger." Larry says to Anna, "Hello, stranger," at the exhibit. This entire movie foreshadowed strangers. Okay, let's talk about the symbolism with the cigarettes. In the beginning, Alice is digging in Dan's bag looking for cigarettes, as she says. I still don't believe that's what she was looking for, but His mother died from smoking cigarettes. When they leave the hospital, she gets a cigarette from a stranger. Stranger gets a cigarette from a stranger and asks him, "Do you want a cigarette?" He says no. He didn't seem very firm in his decision of saying no, that she even says to him, "Try harder." Fast forward when we get to the studio with Anna, Alice, and Dan. That's when we see he's smoking again. Fast forward again when we get to the exhibit. She's smoking a cigarette, looking at her portrait, and Larry comes up. She offers him a cigarette. He says yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, I'm not going to do it. Seemingly committed to he's not going to smoke a cigarette. And then at the end of the movie is Dan looking for cigarettes, and she is no longer smoking them at all, because how she stopped is because of her deep inner strength. The cigarettes seem to highlight the strength of the character. Alice was smoking cigarettes the entire movie, and it wasn't until the end that she developed this strength to stop. Dan was weak and attempted to stop, but never could stop. Whereas Larry was strong the entire time and never went back to cigarettes. I also feel like it showed role reversal when it came to Dan and Alice, because he seemingly in the beginning was strong and then became weak. She started off weak, but then Alice became strong. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Second symbolism, the aquarium. When you experience an aquarium, the main thing is that it's very transparent. You can see everything. Alice, from when we were at the hospital in the beginning, made it very clear she didn't want his sandwich because it was a fish sandwich. Why doesn't she want a fish sandwich? Because fish piss in the sea is what she said. And Dan says to her, "Well, children do too." And she's like, "But I don't eat children." Pin that. We're talking about aquariums right now, but I want you to pin that. Alice hates fish, which I guess you could kind of also tie that she may hate aquariums. We don't know that for a fact, but seemingly she hates things pertaining to the ocean or fish or whatever. However, though, Anna loves the aquarium. She goes there all the time, takes pictures of people there. Like, that is like her spot. Now bear with me. Dan changed the book's title to the aquarium, shockingly, the book fails. I feel like the aquarium is supposed to represent transparency. And Alice, Jane, whatever you want to call her, is the furthest person in this entire movie whom is transparent. The whole book is supposed to be about her, which is based off of a lie, because Dan never even knew who she truly was. Which therefore, having a name such as the aquarium, which still didn't even make sense to me on why he would change it to be the aquarium in the first place, but still, it still didn't represent transparency. And I think that's why the book failed. Aha. 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 Another symbolism, the euphemism. When Dan was explaining about his job at the paper where he writes the obituaries, he says that they use euphemisms to be fun and amongst his colleagues or co-workers or boss or whatever. He says to Alice that her euphemism is disarming. And I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but she was disarming. Why? Because while he was talking and explaining all about himself, all about his job, she's over here taking off his glasses and cleaning it. Like, she was being flirtatious. This entire movie, she disarms or is, she's constantly playing cat and mouse. So that was the third symbolism. Let's talk about the fourth one. The fourth one goes back to the actual person who died, Alice Ayers. So on Alice's gravesite, which is what Jane sees, it says, Alice Ayers is the daughter of a bricklayer's laborer who by intrepid conduct saved 3 children from a burning house in Union Street Borough at the cost of her own young life. This was April 24th, 1885. Okay? Now, obviously, that's where Alice stole the name from. But let's go back to how Alice describes herself. Alice describes herself as a waif, which I already gave you the definition earlier, but I'll repeat the definition. It means a homeless, neglected, or abandoned person, especially child, or a young person who is thin and looks unhealthy or uncared for. Is that not what Alice/Jane looks like? She looked uncared for. I told y'all she looked like Cyndi Lauper walking down the street. And it's also crazy because Alice looked uncared for. And I feel like that's also why Dan was trying to save her so much, because she had a homely, help me kind of look. Is it not ironic that Alice/Jane kind of embodied what the real Alice died doing? The real Alice went in to a burning situation and saved 3 children. Jane went into a very chaotic situation, i.e. a burning chaotic situation, and she dies, but she saves everyone in the situation by killing herself. You need me to break that down? I'll break it down for you. She saved Anna and Larry's relationship, and she low-key saved Dan from their very toxic entanglement. And by doing so, she kills off this persona that she's been pretending to be for the past 4 years, which is Alice. Because really, she is Jane Jones. She comes into, like she says, a waif. A waif is also kind of similar to gypsy. She comes to London with no baggage, no luggage, no nothing. Comes in, takes on this persona, ends this whole situation, leaves without anyone ever realizing or knowing that she wasn't truly who she said she was. Symbolically killing herself. And then she leaves and goes back to New York, or goes back to being whomever she is or whoever she wants to be in the world. Hence the scene of her walking down the street both in the beginning and in the end. It was two different people. One more thing that I would like to point out throughout this movie is I also feel like whenever whenever the characters were in the position of power for whatever moment it was, they always looked the best. Like, they looked good. When they start losing their power, or they were transitioning out of being in the power position, then they looked bad. I feel like the creators of this movie, the director, whomever, purposely did that. That's why I pointed out that Dan looked like a wet dog when he was talking to Larry. I felt like that was intentional, like for us to feel sorry for him and also to make him look pathetic, you know? That would also explain why Alice looks so dadgum good at the end. But from the beginning up until the end, she looked trash. Except for the part when she had a blonde wig on. But still, that was still a transition of power, right? Because first she was weak, or at least she came off as she was weak and needed help and all this other stuff, childlike. But then it seemed like as she grew and she grew stronger and she was the one in the position of power between her and Dan, then that's all of a sudden when she looked amazing. I don't know. What you think? But the question that I have for you is, did Jane, Alice, whatever you want to call her, did Jane save herself by using Alice? The fifth symbolism. Let's talk about Dan and in his career. Dan says that he's a journalist, but he's not really a journalist, but Dan is a journalist by way of the obituaries page, which, let's further break that down. The obituary section, that department specifically, has 3 people. Remember, Alice, the real Alice, saves 3 people. Jane saves 3 people. The obituary department, 3 people. Okay, so something about the number 3, right? So he describes why he's not the journalist that he wants to be. And that's because he believes he has no talent, or he has no voice. Is it not ironic that the fact that he feels like that he doesn't have a voice, but he goes and then steals Jane's voice, Alice's voice? Because the book wasn't about him and his life. The book was about Alice's life. And you could tell later on at the exhibit that he's hurt about the fact that his book failed, because he talks about it very briefly with Anna at that exhibit. But let's pause right there and let's go into the 6th symbolism. Let's talk about the jokes. In the beginning, due to the fact of how Anna and Larry meet, they meet because of Dan. And they call him Cupid. That's their own little personal joke between the 2 of them. Fast forward to the exhibit, Larry asks Anna, did you tell him that our little joke between the 2 of us is that we call him Cupid? And she says, no, I didn't tell him because that's our personal thing. Let's fast forward now to the theater. When we're at the theater, Dan, in his head, he's tripping out that Anna, slept with Larry or whatever. And one thing he mentions is, y'all go back to your old jokes. Showing that either he knows or he's a little bit insecure at the fact of they have jokes together, or he's at least coming up with it in his own head that they have jokes. But at the end, Larry confirms to Dan, when Dan comes to his office, that he indeed has been their joke the whole time. Because immediately when they get back together, what does Anna do? She goes back and tells him everything about Dan. Tell all the secrets. Making him yet again into the butt of their jokes. That is their little insiders. The part that makes it trifling is that Larry shares with him, which he did, of course, obviously on purpose, but that's what makes it trifling, is that he went back and tells him, yeah, we make fun of you. These are I know that you cry at night. I know you do this. I know you do that. So Dan was right the whole time, feeling like he's the joke. The foretelling there is Dan is the joke. Cupid was a joke. The theater, he thought he was a joke. And now Larry confirms, you are indeed our joke. You have been the joke the entire time. Let's take that back into the symbolism of number 5 though. Dan wants to be a journalist. He wants to be a writer so freaking bad. And he tried and he failed. He's in the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to journalism, because he even describes it as Siberia when he's on the bus with Alice. Somehow, if it wasn't for Anna, somehow Larry figures out that this is what Dan is insecure about, or one of the things that Dan is insecure about. Because when he is talking to Dan, he's sitting here poking at him and insulting him. It doesn't come off as direct insults to us, but if you look at it from the lens of Dan, Larry is tormenting him and is insulting him in the worst way possible by saying you're a failure, you're a writer, you're a journalist, you work for the obituaries page. And then to top it off, the cherry on top is Dan does finally become editor. But how does he get that position? It's because someone died. One of the 3 guys in the department dies, and so he then gets promoted, not off of pure talent, not off of the work that he does, but because he was just the next up in line. So he didn't really earn that position, he was given that position. Yet again, signifying his lack of talent for writing. Something that he truly wants to do. And Larry's just mind effing him the whole time by putting him down with these insults. Larry knows Dan's weakness because of Anna. And this is why I say Anna is the problem. That's why he used those things as daggers, because he knew his weakness, because Anna was over here pillow talking. And let me also tie into that. Larry and both Dan were correct. We didn't know this, but yeah. Anna has a weakness for guilt. Isn't it crazy that when I talk to you guys about role reversal, that another role reversal or power play move, Dan pressed Alice for every single detail the exact same way that Larry pressed Anna for every little detail between her and Dan. So when roles were reversed, Dan couldn't help himself but to do the exact same thing, or to feel the exact same way Larry felt when it was him who got cheated on. The irony of the whole dynamic between Larry and Dan is actually kind of funny in a weird way, because Dan says to him when they're in the office, like, oh, you wanted to F me. When in actuality, Larry did end up effing Dan and got his payback twice, because he got his woman back and effed her, and he effed his woman, which we just still don't even know if that's true or not, but seemingly he did F Alice. The reason why I asked, did Alice, Jane, whatever, save herself? I feel like because she embodied this whole different persona, she was able to protect her true person, her true mindset, i.e. Jane, because she was already pretending to be someone that she wasn't. It was a protection. It was an armor. And remember, when Larry and her were in the strip club, he says, there is a chink in your armor. But he thought it was something else, which it wasn't. The real chink in the armor was knowing who her actual identity was. This movie is clever. So there you have it, you guys. That is the end, or that's all I have for you. I mean, y'all may have some more things, but if you do, put them down below in the comments so that way I can see what your thoughts were. If you have more symbolisms that you saw, maybe more foreshadowing, whatever, talk to me down below. I'm gonna be all up in the chats, okay? So that's it for this episode of Wait, Run That Back? The next movie that we are going to watch is going to be called Charlie Wilson's War. You can watch this movie on Netflix. I really don't know what else is on. I saw it on Netflix, and that's how we're going to watch it. If you do know, put it down below in the comments so other people can know where they can watch this movie. But I do know it's on Netflix. At least it's on it right now. Because I don't know when Netflix takes it off. Also, remember, my videos come out 6 p.m. Pacific time and that's 8 p.m. Central Time. So I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.